everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Ash, also known as Fun Acceptable Views on X, and with me are my sharp-shooting co-hosts, Tammy, also known as Unacceptable Canadian Girl, and Suze, or Suze Creamy. Hey, girls, are you ready to take aim at a banger of a topic?
Sure am.
Yes, ma'am, I am. How are you doing, Ash?
I'm doing excellent today. How about you, girls?
You know, living the dream, living the Canadian dream.
I am excellent.
All right. Good. Well, young Jamie is off cavorting around and getting up to a bunch of shenanigans, so we'll be on our own for our fact-checking today.
He's so fired.
What do we not pay him for?
Exactly.
Well, today we have a special guest on, and I'm very excited for this conversation with Tracey Wilson. Tracey is the VP of Public Relations for the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights, the CCFR, and is a registered lobbyist. An Army daughter, wife, and mother with a young daughter currently deployed in the Middle East, her patriot roots drive her ambition to protect the freedoms and property rights of millions of Canadians who safely and legally own firearms. Tracey, thanks for joining us, Broads, today.
Hey, just another broad joining the conversation.
Awesome.
Welcome, Tracey.
Thanks,
Welcome,
guys.
Tracey.
So just for a little backstory on why I wanted to delve into this topic. When the whole pandemic went down and the grocery stores started running out of food, my hubby and I came to a stark realization. We actually live in the wilderness, but if it came down to it, we'd have almost absolutely no means or wherewithal on how to get our own food. We felt like total idiots. And we finally remedied that by getting our PAL, or Possession and Acquisition License to Own Firearms. As the good little commie liberal that I used to be for my whole life, I have actually been vehemently against guns. I wanted nothing to do with them and was completely ignorant about them, including anything to do with hunting. And actually, in fact, we went to a shooting range in Vegas one time, and I hung out in the storefront crying as I walked the aisles looking at books on concealed carry and thinking about what a monster my hubby was for wanting to go and shoot guns. So I've come a long way.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And it actually wasn't until I started listening to Joe Rogan and understanding the reverence that hunters have for both nature and the animals that they're harvesting that I started to understand and realize that I'd been duped in my impression of hunters. And, you know, just the idea that they're somehow these bloodthirsty, irresponsible killers. And that's actually not the case at all. And they're actually, the connection that they have with the land and the animals that they're hunting, it can go very deep. And I think a lot of people who just buy their food from a grocery store don't have that same sort of connection.
Yeah. I have a question, Ash. When you were like back in your liberal days hating on hunters, did you feel the same way about fishermen? I'm just curious.
No, I think I had a little bit of I had a bit of a different mentality about fishermen in general, just because I ate fish, I guess, and I didn't really eat like game meat. So it was easier for me to vilify hunters versus fishermen.
Gotcha.
Typical liberal.
Yeah.
Typical liberal.
So Tracey, I kind of gave the 10,000 foot overview about you, but why don't you tell us a little more about yourself and what's brought you to advocate for firearms rights and in the way that you are?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been a gun owner for about 24 years now, and it started with hunting. You know, I don't say I was against hunting. I just never done it. You know, I probably a little bit older than you guys, but it seemed to be more of like a guy thing. And, you know, your dads and your uncles and your boyfriends or husbands would kind of get together at the hunt camp, and it was their thing. And originally, my ex had asked me to go and get my license and take my hunter's safety education so that we could get an extra tag for deer. So he would have an extra tag for deer. But by the time I went through the courses and did everything, I was like, you know what? I want to hunt. I sort of had this weird realization. I also looked at hunting as sort of less civilized than going to the grocery store, but it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
Because when you go to the grocery store, you're just feeling morally superior because you let somebody else do your killing for you, right? So, the way I looked at it was, well, at the time, the economy was definitely better than it is now, but I often worried about the quality of meat and what we're feeding our kids and all of those things, right? And yeah, so I took up hunting. I started with that. And I lived in Ottawa, but my ex-husband and I had a 100-acre property outside of Ottawa on the Quebec side near Shawville, Quebec. And
that's where my dad was born.
Oh, wow. It's a small world. We'll have to talk about last names after because everything goes by last names up there. But,
off the air. Harold doesn't have a last name.
Okay. But yeah, the reason I got involved in advocacy is multiple times I would be driving. I worked late shifts and I would be driving up to the hunt camp to meet my ex-husband, and I'd have, a truck full of kids and the dog and the coolers and guns and all the stuff I'm dragging up to the camp for the weekend. And in my truck with Ontario plates, I kept having problems with the Sûreté du Québec that would pull me over once I got on the Quebec side, and it was generally late and, dark. And I'd be on these back road highways. And this one time in particular, they pulled me over on the side of the highway. They forced me out of the truck. They emptied the vehicle, knocked the cooler out onto the ground, emptied the contents of that, had, guns and ammo spread about 150 yards down the side of the highway, the dog barking, the kids crying. Wow. And then they just said, "Have a good day, ma'am." And they jumped in their cruiser and left. And I was
Come
like,
on.
Oh my God.
Really? Really? Like, number one, it's not really safe to leave me out here, but now my stuff's from one end to the other. I got to pick it all up. And it's easy just to harass me because I'm a gun owner and I'm out of province. So I, kind of looked around on Facebook and tried to find some like-minded people that I could connect with. And from there, it just sort of grew. I was members of other organizations, and eventually about 8 years ago, I guess, kind of out of the election results in 2015, being members of other groups, a bunch of us looked around at each other and said, I think we need something a little more modern, a little more public relations minded, a little more savvy, and maybe a little more punchy for Canadian gun owners, because it's going to be completely different for the next however long under this liberal regime as it had been under a friendly conservative government. So yeah, basically the CCFR exists because the liberals took power. So yeah, and we founded it literally sitting on the bedroom floor, drinking a coffee, hungover one morning, and kind of, I won't apologize for it, but we went and recruited some of the brightest minds in the community. And now we've grown into the largest firearm advocacy group in Canadian history. And yeah, that's where we're at.
Tracey, what year was that you started up the
2015?
2015. Nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
so we're not very old compared to the other groups, but we've outgrown them by leaps and bounds.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's come a long way. It's funny, I just saw in my memories the other day on Facebook, I had my 7-year anniversary of becoming a paid employee, which of course means I worked for, a year and a bit without getting paid, but that's what you do when you're trying to build something. And now we've got this huge national organization. We're very well supported by our members. I've testified as an expert witness in the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security, and the Senate Standing Committee on National Security and Defense. On Wednesday, I'm presenting to the Ontario Parole Board. I've designed an entire educational program for them. I've collaborated with RCMP NWest on some anti-smuggling initiatives and some initiatives on straw purchasing, which of course is very rare, but I would like to see zero. And yeah, honestly, when people call us the gun lobby, which is what we are, we're actually the public safety lobby. I do more work on public safety than I do on guns. So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of where we're at.
Well, that you know, that is like such an important point, especially with what we're seeing now. There's like such a rise in crime in Canada. And, you know, as much as the Liberal government says they want to crack down on, you know, gun ownership, the ones who are doing the crimes don't seem to be the ones who are actually owning legal firearms. And so how do you propose to do that? It's absolutely upside down.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is, you know, that's another reason when we first started the CCFR, you know, I reached out to a lot of the anti-gun lobbies and said, you know, hey, I think we have similar interests. I also want a safer country. You know, we should sit around the table. And I've learned since, and it's kind of a jaded view, but it's the truth, in that I want to see a reduction in crime, violence, and gun smuggling, and they want to see a reduction in gun ownership. So we don't have the same goals. That's why we can't get along. And it goes the same for the Liberal government. It is purely political. And the big 2020, you know, May of 2020 gun ban shows us that exactly, because they just extended that amnesty for the AR-15 ban out past the next federal election. So when Justin Trudeau says these are guns that are just too dangerous to own, he means they're too dangerous to own, but you're forced to keep them for 5.5 years.
Right.
So, you know, it's purely political, and anybody who's done more than 5 minutes of research knows that.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about Bill C-21, also known as the gun grab bill, because some of our listeners might not know very much about it. And I think it's important for everyone to become informed on these things.
Yeah, so C-21 is particularly egregious because what it did was it enshrined the handgun freeze into law, making it very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to overturn. And that was intentional to make it hard for a future conservative government to do that. But basically, this is a measure that applies only to legal licensed gun owners, their registered handguns that they are only allowed to use at RCMP approved ranges. So it does absolutely nothing for smuggled guns, crime guns, illegal guns, 3D printed guns, any of the bad guns. It does absolutely nothing for those. And then what happens is it's sort of, the idea here is they're basically just waiting for handgun owners to die. And then the idea is there won't be any more handgun owners. So for an example, I own 4 handguns. And even though I have a daughter who has the proper license, that normally I would be able to pass those on to her. They're very expensive personal property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Normally I would be able to pass those on to her or leave them to her in my will. Well, now you can't. So you can't sell them. You can't pass them on to anybody. You can't do anything with them. So when I die and my kids are grieving and my husband's grieving, there'll be a knock at the door from law enforcement, and they're going to come here and forcefully confiscate those 4 handguns and put them in the smelter, regardless of how much they meant to me and how much they meant to my family, and give them nothing in return for it.
Wow.
So
can I ask a quick question? What if you were like married with them? Is that allowed?
No, probably. Well, I mean, I don't know. What are they going to do? Take you up and look for
Like,
them?
sorry, they're with her in the grave. Like, we didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think as time goes on, you're going to see people doing some crazy stuff because, you know, I mean, you know, in all honesty, we're 18 months away maximum from the next election. So there's lots of time to turn it around. Of course, my best advice to everybody is take your vitamins, don't drink too much, and stay alive until at least after the next election. Because unfortunately, for any handgun owners who pass away in the meantime, their belongings. And I mean, you have to understand, these aren't just, you know, these aren't just personal property. The people who own guns, their guns mean a lot to them because it stands for a lot of things. My entire social environment, my friendships, my activities on the weekends and evenings, my summer vacations, everything is tied up in my sport and my community. And that's kind of how it is for most gun owners, right? And so when you take that away from somebody, it's tough. Another measure within C-21 that I find really rough, and all the women's groups opposed this. However, they went ahead and let it go through because it was worth it to them to get that handgun freeze. And that's some changes to the existing red flag laws in Canada. So the Liberals would have you believe that we didn't even have any to begin with, but we have. If you've ever got a safety concern about a firearms owner, you can call 911 if it's immediate. There's also a 1-800 number if it's just a general concern, and watch how the police respond to that. It's an act first, ask questions later type of ERT response, right? But right now, what they've done is they have changed the red flag laws so that a woman, let's say you have a woman who is a victim of domestic violence and her husband's a firearms owner. Before, she could call the police and the police would come and they would deal with it and they would confiscate her husband's guns and arrest him, charge him, and he would have his day in court. Now what's going to happen is she's going to have to take herself down to the courthouse, appear before a judge, and apply to have his firearms taken away.
What?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Wow.
I don't know why you would put a victim through that. And they're saying, well, there are women who are victims of domestic violence who are married to police. And that may very well be true. I mean, I can't deny or confirm. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure when she calls the police, she's not likely to get her husband on the phone. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So the answer to that very unique and rare problem is to legislate for the entire country, right? So that's the way the Liberals look at it. So this puts women in very direct danger, and I think a lot of women would likely not do it because of that.
Yeah, that'd be a total deterrent.
Yeah, absolutely, it would be.
Who wants to go down to the courthouse? Yeah. Because sometimes things just, happen in the moment. And then, if you have to get off your butt and go into a courthouse, things have probably settled down by that point. If they have it all. Wow, that's so unsafe.
Yeah, it's literally crazy. And then there's a bunch of kind of minor things within C21. But another thing they did was they put a clause in there that makes it very difficult for future governments to downgrade the classification of firearms.
Oh,
I don't know. Yeah. So that's tough because, of course, they took, AR-15s along with almost 2,000 other rifles and, models and variants of rifles and made them prohibited. So, if the idea is that a Poilievre government would come into power and just overturn that, it's not going to be that simple. So, at the end of the day, the good news is we've also got our guns. Somebody asked me the other day, is it tough always losing under this government? And I'm like, let me break it down for you. I look in my gun cabinet to what I owned in 2015 when this government took power and we started the CCFR compared to what I own now. Canada has never been more armed than we are now. The greatest gun salesman in the history of this country is Justin Trudeau. So
that's wild.
I've still got all my stuff and everybody else still got all their stuff. And we, the pendulum is swinging the other way. So I just tell everyone just to hang on. It might get a little rougher before it gets better, but it will get better.
Well, something that kind of spurred us on to go and get our PAL license was the fact that it could get taken away from us. And so, we decided, well, we should get it while we still can, in the case that it could be, say, grandfathered in versus people in the future who might not be able to get their PALs. And so my husband and I have been wondering, are you seeing a surge in people going out and getting their possession and acquisition license?
Yeah, it's funny. The chief firearms report just came out, and last year there was 100,000 new gun owners born. So that means 100,000 Canadians went and got at least their PAL last year, if not their RPAL. So when you're growing at that rate, the best thing is, I spoke about this in our podcast today, was it's not just those 100,000 people who will now be influenced to vote a different way than maybe they had previously. It's everybody around them. I think about it between my husband and I, we've got 5 adult children, all voting age. We've got our neighbors, we've got colleagues, we've got our friends. Like, think how big your immediate circle is of people that you may have influence over, right? So our 2 votes are now like 25 or 30 votes, 50 votes, who knows, right? So, you know, that's the most important thing is every one of those brand new gun owners will now be voting with that in mind, right? It's going to influence the way they choose who they want to lead this country. So, yeah, that's really positive news for gun owners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know I wanted to go get mine. Hopefully I don't miss my opportunity. Tammy, do you have yours? I can't remember. I know you said you know how to shoot, but I didn't know if you actually had your license or not.
No, not yet. I'm hoping to get it like very shortly.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're not ready to go out and buy guns yet, it's an excellent thing to have on your resume as well, right? There's no more vetted Canadian than a gun owner.
I'm ready to buy guns.
Tammy's like, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Hey, Tracey, I have a question for you.
Sure.
With the restricted firearms, so does that mean that, I guess, what is the benefit now to going and getting your RPAL? Because I do still want to do it, but what is the benefit to getting it if you can't have those guns?
So there are still a number of rifles, I can't think of them off the top of my head, with a restricted, you know, classification that you could buy. But here's exactly why you want to go and do it now. Like I said, within 18 months at the longest, it could be sooner, we will have an election and we will have a new government. And when C-21 gets overturned and that handgun freeze, that window reopens, can you imagine how nuts it's going to be? Everybody in the country who had just a PAL is going to want to go get their RPAL. Like, great,
Right.
go out and buy handguns again. So get ahead of those guys and get it now while it's quiet. Nobody's standing in line for it.
Yeah.
Go get it now. I mean, there's lots of people standing in line for a PAL, but a lot of people are turned off from getting an RPAL for that exact reason. But I think it's the exact opposite. Now is the time to go get it, because when that bill gets overturned and the market opens again for handguns, you don't want to have to wait to go take your course. You know, there'll be waiting lists for course. Like, who knows how quickly you could get in.
Right.
So do it now and just have it. Then you've got it.
Well,
And-
there's another side to that too, because if for some crazy reason the Liberal government does stay in power and they decide to restrict more firearms, you could also potentially be grandfathered in if you get your RPAL. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracey, but this is my thinking that at least if you already own guns that become restricted, if you have your RPAL, like a lot of people who have their RPAL already, they get to keep their restricted guns because they already had them before this came into place.
Yeah, that could be. The Liberals move more guns over to the prohibited category rather than restricted. But yeah, like, to me, go out and get the highest license you can for a variety of different reasons. In the past too, we've seen things like the AR-15 previous to the May 2020 ban. We had the AR-15, the CZ-858, the Swiss Arms Green. Those were all guns that successive Liberal and conservative governments kept moving between non-restricted and restricted, non-restricted and restricted, right? So, or even prohibited. It's just, you have to be able to have that license. And then also, if you've got a restricted license and you know somebody who is, you know, maybe getting older, or maybe just, you know, for whatever reason wants to hand them over to you, you won't be able to take them if you don't have the appropriate license. So my advice is to go get it now, beat the lineups when it does open up again. And yeah, in the meantime, there are other, there's lots of little cute 9mm rifles that are restricted that are a lot of fun. I got a few in mind myself.
Tracey, just a question for you. In regards to criminals who do illegal activities for a living, do you think that this has deterred them at all, and that we've seen a reduction in crime?
I love how
I already
you're
know the answer, but
smirking and laughing through that entire question.
Yeah, you couldn't even get through it without cracking up.
Well, and here's why. I for a living, I'm not a cop, but I do deal with criminals for a living as part of my job. And I know what this answer is, but I want to just hear it from you.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, we've got 9 years of liberal public safety policy, and it speaks for itself. We've got repeated gun bills, we've got gun bans. Criminals are emboldened. Canada has never been a more violent place than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of violent crime, in particular gang related homicide, are all on the rise. And, between the government focusing entirely on legal gun owners and then also tabling crazy bills like C5 and C75 that lessen the sentencing for some very serious firearm related crime, it's like we're living in an upside down world.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is the opposite of how it should be. And, when people say Canada's broken, I know it's just a tagline, but it's literally true. I mean, we are seeing the results of these policies playing out now, and it's going to be very difficult to reverse, but we have no choice. We have to. So, I mean, when I've got the Ontario Parole Board and law enforcement reaching out to me for help, they're drowning, like this is what's going on here. So, unfortunately, the Liberal record on public safety does speak for itself, and it's been a tragic, bloody failure.
Well said.
Welcome to the circus, everyone.
Yeah, if it wasn't so tragic, it wouldn't be funny. It's like being governed by lunatics.
And do you think so? You had mentioned earlier when they, if say, God forbid something were to happen to you tomorrow, and they would take your restricted firearms that you have and not allow them to be grandfathered down to your family members or whatever. Do you think that they actually throw them into a smelter, or do you think that they go elsewhere?
No, they do destroy them, but I've got a piece of advice. I actually was talking to an RCMP officer about this about 2 months ago. I was actually driving my rental car across Saskatoon, and we were talking about this situation. He said, I'll give you some inside information. He says, when a person dies, if their family doesn't contact the Canadian Firearms Program or the RCMP and report that, we don't know it. When we do know it is whenever their license expires, and then obviously they don't renew it because they're not alive anymore, and they don't renew it, that's when it starts coming up with flags, is 6 months after that expired license, when the grace period runs out, because that's when the RCMP program says, wait a minute, there are restricted registered handguns linked to this owner and they have not renewed. So then that's when the police will go knocking. So there is a window of time there, depending on when your loved one, like, if I just renewed my license and I got hit by a bus tomorrow, my family would probably have a minimum of 4.5 years before my license would expire, and then another 6 months of grace period before it would flag to the RCMP firearms program.
Now, what would happen if your family, say, didn't know that, because not everybody knows about guns. So what would happen if they didn't know that they needed to be handed in, or, whatever the case is, and they got rid of them by some other means? What then happens once the police come knocking?
Well, they would likely be charged.
Wow.
Yeah, they would likely be charged. And that's why you see, there has been a few cases where, you've got widows or family members or whatever calling to report a death. And unfortunately, then immediately the cops come and get your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this can buy you a little time for either a legislative change or, we've got a few retailers. The one place that can buy them is retailers. However, retailers can't resell them either. So, sometimes they'll hold them kind of for safekeeping in anticipation of what might change politically down the road. But yeah, it's a sticky situation because, you've got people cleaning out houses after their loved one passed away. And yeah, what are you going to do with them, right? Yeah, so it may not be for everyone, but if you're in a position to just leave the safe locked and just ignore it. That's my advice.
Tracey, I wanted to kind of touch on the idea that a lot of hunters might, well, this is coming from my own opinions and people that I know from my good old Liberal days, who see hunters as these kind of like people who don't care for the land, they don't care for the animals, and that actually isn't the case whatsoever, and that
Yeah.
hunters and anglers associations are actually responsible for some of the best forest conservation efforts that we have in this country.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I think that it's just a bunch of propaganda driven mindfuckery akin to gaslighting, the gaslighting we're seeing currently with the like against the farmers, where the farmers, hunters, and anglers have a real visceral connection with nature and are some of the best stewards of the land that we have. And so I see this as just another way the globalists are using to control our food supply, in my opinion. So I wondered if
Yeah.
you had an opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's well known fact that hunters are the number one contributors to conservation. And, you know, I saw a guy on X kind of arguing with me today about that, you know, saying, well, the hunting tags that hunters buy do not outweigh like taxes and all the other revenue streams. And it's like, here's the thing. I'm a hunter, you know, so yeah, I buy all kinds of tags and contribute that way. I'm also a taxpayer, just like him. So I contribute that way. I am a member of the Wildlife Federation. I am a member of the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. I donate to a variety of different conservation clubs. I know in Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation is the largest landowner in the province. And what they do is they've had land left to them in wills. They've bought parcels of land. They do all kinds of marsh rehabilitation projects. So does every provincial wildlife federation, by the way. In Ontario, we've got the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. And their whole goal is conservation. It's not actually hunting, but hunting contributes to that, because as a hunter, I know, like if I've got a regular place that I go and hunt, the worst thing I could do is let that land go to shit, right? There won't be a deer for 100 miles. So if I want to have the abundance and the resources that nature provides, then yeah, I have to take care of her, right? So yeah, I think it's really important for hunters. And then you also develop, fishermen get this too, most outdoors people do, is you develop this love of nature. And it's not about just going out with your big loud gun and shooting a pretty deer in the face. Like, that's not what it's about. I mean, you're losing a lot of sleep, you're getting up, you're going out in the cold, you're sitting in there in the dark, you're watching the sun come up over the mountain, watching every little thing come alive, watching the frost melt off the branches. And just, like if you could record that and then play it in fast motion, it would be the most beautiful thing you've ever experienced. Whether or not you see an animal or get a shot at a deer is kind of secondary. There's never a day wasted hunting, regardless of whether you have any luck or not. So it's probably, the most unplugged, plugged in you could ever be. Like, it's just, it's an incredible experience. And I know I raised two daughters. They're 33 and 21 now. And, we had lived a very strict life. I did not allow any electronics, any video games, any cell phones, anything until they were 13. And that was tough because they were teased a lot in school for it. But they had four-wheelers, they had guns. We would go up to the camp every weekend. Their playground was 100 acres of mountain, and it was just an incredible opportunity for them. And I would love to preserve that for the generations to come. I think it's important, and it is a deep, meaningful part of Canadian heritage.
It sounds stunning. Absolutely
Yeah, it
stunning.
does.
I did want to ask, what is your favorite type of hunting?
I love deer hunting. I hunt white-tailed deer. Not very good at it. But I love it. I love the solitude of it. I'll tell you two hunting stories, but I love the solitude of deer hunting. They're very smart. They are very afraid. So you have to sit incredibly still and be incredibly quiet. And it's, the thunderous sound of silence is almost deafening when you're sitting out there by yourself. And, a little chipmunk scurrying around sounds like an elephant, right? It's just, it's the most wildest experience. And, and then I'd spend the day roaming the forest and then head back to my tree stand at night and watch the whole process go in reverse, right? Watch everything get darker and colder and quieter. And then I'd end up leaving the bush in the black dark. And it was just, I spent my entire day basking in the beauty of nature that I can't even describe to anyone else because I was there by myself. It was amazing. And then my second favorite type of hunting is goose hunting. And I joined these women, the Canadian Sports Women's Society. They're a group here in Ontario. They're actually down in Southern Ontario. And these women are a hoot. They are absolutely wild. They're nuts. I didn't realize how social goose hunting was. They took me on my first guided hunt, and we had an out there, and there was about, I don't know, 8 of us girls. We stayed up way too late the night before drinking whiskey. We were hungover to death in the morning. We get out to the field, and the farmer had cut most of the corn down in the field and left a few rows. And within that first row of corn is where we would hide. And we all had these buckets to sit on, and we had our shotguns, and we had all these decoys out in front of us, you know, where the corn had been cut down. And then we had a guy who would do goose calls and flap his fake wings and stuff. And you get these flocks of geese coming in, and he'd yell at us just at the right time, like, kill them all. And we'd stand up and we'd blast them. And it was like Vietnam. And I mean, they were dropping on our heads, and it was just out of control nuts. It was a lot of fun. But in between reams of geese coming in, or flocks of geese flying in, you kind of have those not quiet time. It was the exact opposite. It's like the downtime. And these chicks were nuts, man. They were up like doing dances between the corn rows and filming TikTok videos and like just going completely nuts. And then, the guy'd yell at us again, like, sit down, get ready, here they come.
It sounds like my kind of hunting trip.
Me too.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
I left there and I was like, these chicks are exhausting me. Like, this is absolutely insane. I've never laughed so hard in my life. And then run around in the mud in our rubber boots trying to pick up all these dead geese everywhere. And yeah, it was like just wild. I was like, oh my God, I don't know, I need a nap. Like, that was nuts.
You need to go deer hunting to, center yourself again.
Yeah, exactly. Total opposite, extreme opposites of experiences, but just awesome. And again, it's the fun, right? It's the camaraderie. I'm out there with a bunch of other chicks. Who knows if I shot the goose or she shot the goose? Does it even matter? It doesn't matter. We're just having a blast, literally. Dancing some TikToks. We were weaving hats out of the corn leaves, and I don't know. It was ridiculous. Just
that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I like that.
Awesome. It's almost like no matter what your flavor is, like if you want that solitude and extremely quiet, there's options, and if you want a crazy party time, there's those options too. So
yeah, absolutely, and everything in between. I mean, walking down the trails, shooting at partridge, we've done that. Like there's all kinds of different activities depending on what you're interested in. My husband's a trapper too, so he likes catching all kinds of critters. But yeah, I mean that's the whole goal is from nature you take, but you must also give, and part of that is being a steward of the land and no trace visits. You pick up everything you took with you. Everything you took in has to come out, and you try and leave the bush a better place than you found it.
So I have another hunting question. So like, let's say, I get my license and everything like that, and I know nothing about hunting specifically. Are there like sort of like types of like hunting clubs that you can go and like they kind of teach you the ways and all the different type of animals that you can hunt for, et cetera? Or you kind of like just got to do your own research and kind of get out there?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Your best bet is to find somebody local to mentor you, right? And sometimes you can find that through your local fishing game clubs or the wildlife federations. But there are a lot of resources, like for women, particularly in Ontario, there's the Canadian Sports Women's Society. They actually do some different hunts all across the country. But they do everything from like co-ed pheasant hunts where you can, bring your husband, to like a women's moose hunt, like all kinds of stuff. And yeah, that's the whole idea. There's also another female Canadian hunter. She's got her own TV show, Amanda Lynn Mayhew, and she's got a Take Me Hunting program. So you can find that at justhunt.com. We sponsor another girl who's got a TV show, Jerica. She's an Indigenous hunter. She does a lot of teaching sort of more traditional methods of hunting and then harvesting. So you're not just harvesting the meat, you're using the bones to make tools, you're using the hide to make clothing, teaches you how to tan hides and stuff. And, it's just some of these, I don't know, maybe I'm a prepper or something, but some of these more primitive down home ways I think are really appealing to people because it's almost like we've become so air quote progressive that we're regressive, right?
Yeah, we're so disconnected from our heritage and our land and
Yeah,
exactly.
I wanted to touch on something because I had a kind of a rude awakening today, thanks to Ashley.
You're welcome.
She in our group chat for the podcast, she shared a tweet from the CCFR, and it was a tweet that was in regards to you guys suing the Trudeau government over the gun ownership stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously I know about this, and I think everybody in Canada probably knows that this is a thing that they want to take away firearms and stuff like that. But it struck me in a way today that I wasn't really expecting because I hadn't thought of it in this way. But I did after I read the post, and I just want to share just part of it, and then maybe you could touch on it a little bit more. But
Sure.
in part of this post, you guys wrote, currently the Canadian government can arbitrarily decide something you own should be illegal and confiscate it. This can apply to anything you legally own right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that really hit me because all this time I hadn't thought about it in regards to anything else that I own. But when I read that today, like that one cut deep. So can you just touch on that a little bit? Because I think that maybe people, aren't seeing it that way, and maybe more people do need to see it that way.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, this was a very serious legal question that we put before the federal courts because, when that May 2020 gun ban happened, I recognize, I'm not stupid, I recognize that the majority of Canadians don't care. Nobody feels bad if the rednecks are getting their guns taken away from them, right? But the deeper question here was, well, wait a minute. We're Canadian citizens. We've done nothing to warrant this. I have followed every law to the T. I have complied with every regulation that you've put on me. I've done everything you've asked of me. I've signed that social contract with you saying that this firearms license grants me these privileges, but because I uphold the laws and follow the regulations, then leave me alone, right? And they broke that by saying it doesn't matter that you've owned these firearms for decades, if not generations. We're going to decide arbitrarily to ban them. So we started thinking about it deeper when we talked to our legal team, and it was like, well, wait a minute. Do we not have any property rights in Canada? Like, I get it. If you misuse something, if you, take your car and drive it into a building or something, like, or misuse it, you may lose it, right? And that goes the same with firearms. If you misuse them, you risk losing them. But we haven't done anything to deserve this. And, that's when we started realizing that gun owners are the canary in the coal mine for property rights. So we've got another website called propertyjustice.ca. And we started logging all this information because that was a really big part of our defense in court was you can't just arbitrarily step into the life of a Canadian who's done nothing to deserve it and take stuff from them that without a just reason. And the government says, well, here's our reason. These are too dangerous for you to own. Regardless of the fact that you've owned them for decades, you've never committed
the proof
with them. Yeah. And here we are 4 years since they banned them, and they're all still sitting in my safe downstairs, but they're just far too dangerous for you to have. So that's when we started saying, well, wait a minute, this isn't about gun bans. This is about property rights. And, we took out 64 full page ads in news papers across the country, National Post and Globe and Mail and all these big mainstream publications, and, tried to plead to people like this isn't just our fight. This isn't just about gun owners. This is about property rights. And if the government can arbitrarily decide, come along, open my gun safe and say, I'm going to take this one, and that one, and there's nothing I can do about it, what else can they take? Can they look in your garden shed and say, oh, you've got a gas lawnmower? No, I don't think so. Oh, wait a minute. Is that a gas vehicle in your laneway? Let me measure your SUV to see if you're over the limit. You do not need that truck.
Is
right?
that a wood burning stove? Oh, you can't have that
Exactly.
anymore.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you what else they can take, because I asked that question for a reason. And the reason is, has anybody here heard about what's going on in the region of Waterloo, more specifically Wilmot Township?
No. I don't
Okay.
think I want to know.
You
I
probably
know.
don't.
Oh, God.
You probably don't, but it's very important. So on March 12th, landowners of 6 farmland properties and 6 residential properties were told by the region of Waterloo that they plan to purchase their land. So it's 770 acres of land in Wilmot Township, which is right outside of kind of the Waterloo main area. And if the landowners refuse to sell, they've been told that their land would be expropriated.
Wow.
So nobody's talking about this. And this is why I wanted to bring up this point with you, Tracey, because you are so bang on with what you're saying. And that post really hit me today when I read it. And it immediately made me think of this. And this isn't even under the guise of safety. This is simply just, if you're not going to sell it to us, we are going to take it.
Yeah.
Do they have, like, were they given reasons as to how they're just able to just take it if they're not going to sell it?
No.
The reason I'm asking is because we have, like, people that live very close to me, and there's a bunch of land where these people have been there for decades. And I think it's the Ford government, it basically wants to build some ridiculous highway. And they've been approached multiple times to sell their property, and they've been saying no for like the past 10 years, and they're still there. Like, they're still able to keep their properties. I imagine that's probably going to change at some point. I'm just wondering if these people were given some sort of reasoning as to why.
So it's for economic vitality. They want to grow the area to 1 million residents by 2050.
Wow.
And that's the only reason that they gave. So, go ahead.
There is a provision under the law for that, and it's called expropriation. And that's an action where the state can basically take property from its owner for public use or benefit. So that has happened. Like, a lot of the highways that we drive on now, we don't think about it because maybe we weren't even around back then. But a lot of that property did belong to people. And if you were in the path of where a highway was going to go, they would usually come along and offer you more than it was worth, for your troubles to get out of there. And some people, fought it. Some highways ended up going around people's property, and other people just got moved, and that was it. And then they would pay you just a base rate, per acre or whatever it is. Right. So yeah, like, when it's for public use, like, there is a provision in Canadian law for that.
So essentially, property ownership of any kind is an illusion.
Yeah, it is. Like, you have 0 property rights in Canada. The government can take anything it wants from you at any time for any reason.
And we're also seeing this creep in through the UNDRIP, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. And so there's land in BC, I believe, that they're starting to take back for this reason. Good old United Nations, you know how much we love them on this podcast. And so they're doing this slow creep of usurping properties from people, in all sorts of different manners. Some of it's firearms, some of it is it's for UNDRIP, some of it's for what Tammy was mentioning. And so they all have their separate reasoning. It's not just to take away people's property. It's for this specific reason, but the thing is, they're creeping in on all sides and doing this. And how long before living, say, in a place where I am, will this be considered, because I live on an island, and how long before this is considered, some sort of delicate territory where, they need to preserve, and you're not allowed to live here anymore because of climate change, or whatever they want to say, right?
No, we can't let that happen. Your island is our escape plan.
I know.
Rabbit Island.
Yeah.
Rabbit Island.
Yeah.
There's this whole other really weird thing that's going on too. And of course, this is one of these globalist ideas. And it's, this is not like a conspiracy theory. It's the 30 by 30 initiative. And,
Right.
on outset, it sounds like a great idea, right? Like the idea is that, the governments of the world, and I think there's 190 countries that have committed to doing this. But the idea here is that 30% of the land and 30% of the water of the world would be conserved, and protected by 2030. So it's 30, 30, 30, right? But the problem here is it doesn't, that sounds great. Well, yeah, we should protect the land and the water and, make sure we don't industrialize it and it's there for future generations. It sounds great, but that's not what it's about. What it's about is keeping you off of it. So when they talk about conserving, they're not talking about conservation like, the wildlife groups do, where they improve habitats for future use. They're talking about denying access to people. So if you think about that, 30% of the world's oceans you would no longer be able to go there. So not only would, boats or cruise ships or whatever not be allowed to go through, you wouldn't be able to fish it. And 30% of the world's land, you wouldn't be able to farm it. You wouldn't be able to put, farm animals on it. You wouldn't be able to actually use it at all. And that's sort of setting a dangerous precedent because, there isn't anything wrong with using the beautiful natural resources that the planet provides as long as you protect them. And there's a big difference between, conserving it to the point where you're not actually using it, not allowing access or anything, and reserving it for future uses, right? So, yeah, that's anybody can look it up. Just Google, 30 by 30 UN, and you'll see it there. And yeah, you sort of have to read between the lines because it sounds like a noble idea, but there's nothing noble about minimizing the amount of usable space that humans can use as long as they use it well, right? So yeah, it's 30% of hunting land would be gone, 30% of fishing land would be gone. Like
Wow.
that's a problem.
Good old 2030. I know that's going to be a great year. Looking forward to it.
God, I don't even know if we'll make it at this point.
I know.
I hope the aliens
Truly.
come and get me before then.
Yeah, send the asteroid. Yeah.
Flood it again.
I have that 420 Jesus, if you know what I mean. That's a meme, and it's like Jesus poking his head in. He's like, y'all fucked up, right?
So going back to just a little bit about I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on this, Tracey. Just the there's a Reddit community called Canada Guns, and they often talk about their gun starter kits. And there seem to be a lot of opinions out there on what guns are good to buy when you're a newbie. And since guns and ammo can get quite expensive, what are your suggestions for the types of guns people should be looking at when they're just starting out?
Well, the number one firearm that anybody should go and buy first is a 22 rifle. I would recommend semi-automatic because they're a lot of fun, but they're dirt cheap to shoot. You can buy the great big buckets. So these shoot the tiny, tiny little bullets. Like it's a firearm that I would buy for my kids when they were kids, because you could afford to feed it, right? I can't afford to feed them 308 rounds all day long. But yeah, hey kids, here's a bucket of 22 ammo. Have a great day. So yeah, a 22. Now I'll tell you that I've had all kinds of different semi-automatic 22s, kind of, old school Rugers that look like, they're wood frame and looks like something my grandpa would own. And then a couple of years ago, I got my 22 that I use now. She's semi-auto. She's Cinderella Blue, and I call her Bluebell. And it's a Daria TM22, I believe they're called. And they're all aluminum. They weigh nothing. I took this thing, got it, picked it up in Cambridge, Ontario, drove all the way to New Brunswick to a ladies' range day I was hosting there. We had 114 women at the range. I pulled this thing out of the box, brand new, never even put a drop of lube in it, didn't do anything to it, filled a mag, jammed it in, and handed it to them on the line. And they fired tens of thousands of rounds out of it that day. And it never jammed once. Like, it was just an absolute dream. So shameless plug for the Daria TM22. That's probably my favorite rifle right now.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, and they're not super expensive. I think you're looking around $500 or $600 for the rifle. And like I said, the ammo you can shoot all day and it costs you next to nothing. So yeah, so that's really important. But my starter kit would be some sort of 22 semi-auto, a shotgun. I, as a woman, I kind of prefer 20 gauge because it's a little less of a mule kicking me in the shoulder. But you know what? If you hang on to that thing, hang on to it like you own it, is what my ex used to say. A shotgun's a lot of great fun, but you got to be ready for it because it's a little bit like having a car accident every time you fire it if you're not holding it right. So shotgun's super important. Of course, handguns are off the market right now, but then maybe something to shoot a little bit long distance. Before I shot 308, I would shoot 243. And that's a nice kind of mid-range rifle. You can use it for hunting. You can take a deer down with it. You can also shoot targets with it. So those would kind of be my three favorite guns. But yeah, a semi-auto 22 should be your very first purchase.
Okay, great. That's actually what we got as a Ruger 22 for me specifically, because I need to learn target. And I mean, holy crap, some of that ammo out there is expensive. So this was a perfect little gun to practice on, and it feels nice and light, and I like it so far. So
yeah, and there's no kick to a 22, right? It's just a tiny little round. It's barely above a BB. So you can just shoot that thing all day. You're never going to get a sore shoulder or be afraid of the recoil. Like there's none of that, right?
Yeah. I've shot 3 guns in my day that my friend took me to the shooting range to do, and 22 was one of them, and it was so much fun. And I, like, by the end of the day, I was like a kill shot with that thing. What else did I shoot? I think I shot, like, what was it called? A 30-30 shotgun? Does that sound right, Tracy?
Yeah, 30-30. Yeah,
that one that had some kick. I wasn't so good with that one. And then I shot a handgun. It was a 40 or something like that was the handgun, which was extremely difficult.
45 probably
to shoot as well. But the 22 was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like literally children can shoot it. So it's a perfect kind of starter rifle. If you just want to get the hang of it, build your confidence and move on from there. And like I said, super cheap to shoot. So, it's great for practice if you're trying to, hone your skills or whatever. You're not blowing through $4 a round or something, right? So, yeah.
I love how we're talking starter guns.
Right?
It's amazing.
We're gonna go get our license, Tammy. Let's do it.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do it for a while. I mean, I've been shooting guns my whole life because I'm from the country and that's just what we do, but I should probably do it legally.
Yeah, should probably do it legally.
Well, that that was something that when I actually took my firearm safety course, I used to be afraid of guns because I knew nothing about them. I was completely ignorant about them. And as soon as I, you get into that course and they just lay all the guns out on the table, there's no ammo in them, and there's like extra safety precautions, but they get you to like pick them up, and you have to learn how to disarm all these different types of guns, just like how to you have to prove it. So that's basically like making sure that there's no ammo in it, and that it's safe to handle. And going through all of the firearm safety is, I think, one of the most important things that people can do as Canadians, just to learn how you can be safe around firearms.
I think if people did that, they would feel a lot more comfortable with guns.
Exactly.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they would.
I think
And that's kind of the idea behind National Range Day, which is an initiative that we brought up. You know, we invented it. I don't know if invent is the right word, but you know what I mean. We developed it 3 years ago, and the idea is, you know, if I can't get all Canadians to become gun owners, which of course would be nice, but that's fine. But at least if they stop supporting bad liberal policy, and we can fight on Twitter all day and go back and forth, but the very best way to influence somebody's opinions about guns or gun ownership is just to take them to the range. So National Range Day, you can go to nationalrangeday.ca, another website, and you can find a range event near you, and most of them are free to go to. And you can walk in and you'll have a mentor there. You can try shooting a handgun. You can shoot a shotgun. You can shoot a rifle. You've got one-on-one mentorship in a safe environment. And yeah, maybe you'll just walk away with a little bit of a different take than you had when you came in. So that's
And
really
that's
June
June
much
1st
fun.
this year?
yeah,
1st?
June 1st. It's always the first Saturday in June. So it lands on June 1st this year, which is such a killer because my girl comes home from deployment. Well, she starts traveling that day, but you know, it takes quite a while to get back from the Middle East. So I think she won't arrive in Canada until June 2nd. But yeah, it's just going to be hell actually being at the event and just, you know, so excited for her to get home. It's been a long 8 months. Oh God,
Wow.
it's great. Yeah. Yeah.
I know what I'll be doing on June 1st.
Going to the range?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yes.
really think more people should give that a shot because I just think that people are afraid of what they don't know, and if they just gave it a shot, no pun intended, if they would have they would have so much fun doing it because it's such a riot. And it would probably make people a lot less afraid because there truly, if you're doing it safely, there really is nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
No, well, that's it. I mean, when you've got one-on-one mentorship too, girls are always far better to teach than men because men are always like, yeah,
Of course,
I know
naturally.
what to do. Just give me the gun and get out of the way, little lady. You know, but you get women there and they're interested in actually learning. Okay, now how do I hold it? How does this operate again? Which way does the mag go? These sound like silly questions, but they're not. How do you ever learn if nobody teaches you, right? So yeah, National Range Day is a lot of fun. I take about 600 people to the range with me that day.
Nice.
And I've got a team of about 38 volunteers, and everyone gives up their day, volunteers, and we've got a kids range open, and we got the cowboy action guys doing demo, which is hilarious. You can throw on a cowboy hat and go shoot some of these old wheel guns and lever action guns, and it's just a total hoot. But,
I have a question, Tracy. You said you have a kids range open. What's the ages like requirement for the kids?
Well, I mean, they got to be able to stand up and they got to be able to, be functioning. They got to be able to hold a rifle. I mean, they will have help, right? So, I think
I can bring my 6-year-old is what I'm saying.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
and they're single shot 22, so they'll
That's
have
awesome.
one-on-one mentoring. They'll have an adult with their arms wrapped around them, making sure nothing happens. And they get to shoot at steel, which is a lot of fun. So we've got all these colorful steel targets downrange, ice cream cone shapes and lollipop shapes and hearts and turtles and all kinds of stuff.
I love it.
That's awesome.
I love them and they make a cool noise when you hit them.
I will say my favorite quote of the night so far is, how old do they have to be to go? And they have to be able to stand.
Yeah, if you can stand, I'll put a gun in your hand. You're good to go.
Might be a good title.
Yeah. Oh God.
Oh man.
Too good.
All right. Well, I think that's about a good time to start wrapping up. Suze, do you have any sort of final thoughts on what we've talked about today?
No, just I'm gonna go take the course with Tammy. We're gonna get our license, and Tracy, you can take the restricted and the non-restricted, the regular PAL. You can do like a combo course, right?
Yes,
yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, that take the combo course. You may as well just get it under your belt because mark my words, when things get turned around with a more friendlier government and they focus on actual crime instead of gun owners and things open back up again, the line up to get into that restricted course is going to be crazy. So just go get it now, get it out of the way. And then when that day comes, you can just walk right into the store. You're ready to go, right? So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, no final thoughts for me, except I know my family trip for June 1st. I'm super excited for it.
Nice. Yeah, we've signed up for our or to our local club. And I like it because they actually put you on probation for a whole year. And so basically, there's extra special rules that you have to follow when you're on probation, just to make sure that you're safe when you're showing up. And they do like a a walkthrough of the whole place. You have to, the first time you go, you have to go with like kind of like a sponsor or someone from the club.
Yeah.
And so something that I just think is so important to get across to people is that as someone who used to be so anti-gun and now kind of getting to be a part of this community, you start to understand that the people who own firearms are extremely responsible with them, because it is a big responsibility to own them. And so
Yeah.
if only people who were so anti-gun that they won't even talk about it would actually just learn a little bit more from the people who actually have and use firearms, they might feel a lot more comfortable about the idea of firearms in general, because you have to be careful and responsible with them. And so
Yeah.
when you start to realize just like how safe things are, it really does kind of change your mind on things. Tammy, did you have any final thoughts for the evening?
Not really. Just I guess I've never really known a gun owner that wasn't probably one of the safest people I've ever
Yep.
met. And I think that's important that people recognize that and understand that they're typically well trained. And I'm glad we touched on even like the hunting stuff and the land stuff as well, because all of the people that I know that hunt are very appreciative of the land and of the animals and everything like that. So I think for anybody listening, if you don't know much about this stuff, please, dive a little bit deeper into it and get to understand it and get familiar with it, because you're missing out. And I guess also, it was important to me today that we talked about, how easily our property, and I say that in quotations because it's not really ours, can be taken away from us. And I think this was a really good way to kind of talk about that. So thank you, Tracey.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come talk to you girls today. And it's a great chat. And yeah, it's always about more than just guns, but people who are out there who are maybe even just curious, gun curious. Head over to nationalrangeday.ca, find an event near you. If you follow me on Twitter, or even if you don't, send me a message. I can try and link you up with somebody. But before you make, an assumption or kind of make up your mind about a topic, I just ask that you learn a little bit about it and have a little bit of understanding for the differences that make us all unique and the stuff that brings us together. And, more Canadians are licensed firearms owner than are registered for organized hockey. So it's Canada's sport.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Tracey, once again. Thanks for being one of the broads this evening. This was a very enlightening conversation. Would you like to just share once again with the audience where they can find you? We're going to add some links into the show notes, but you might as well just kind of say it while you're on the air.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find my very spicy Twitter account at T Wilson Ottawa. So yes, I am over here in the swamp. Somebody's got to be here.
Boo.
Yeah, sorry. You can find all the cool stuff that the CCFR is working on over at ccfr.ca. All the topics about property rights and our federal court challenge, which is now in the appeal courts with the federal government trying to win Canadians some property rights. You can find that at propertyjustice.ca. And then once again, lastly, head on over to nationalrangeday.ca and look for an event near you.
Awesome. All right. Well, Suze, since you were horse ivermectin wasn't as effective as you'd hoped, and your tiny horse was under the weather for longer than expected, you and Tammy switched up your hosting spots.
We did.
To keep
She
the
took
schedule
the reins.
same. She took the reins. But just to keep the schedule the same for future guests, are you ready to tackle your next topic, or do you need more time to decide?
Oh, no. I know exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to have a little chat about our oh so lovely healthcare system. You know, that amazing, shitty healthcare system we have. So we're going to have a special guest on next week as well. My sister-in-law will be joining us. So she actually got extremely sick back in 2018. And our, oh so lovely, amazing healthcare system bounced her around the system like a yo-yo for over 3 years. And she did not get a diagnosis until mid-2021. So she's going to come on and kind of walk us through how shitty our system really is and how much it failed her, because now, unfortunately, she is in a chronic state and there's pretty much no helping her. So,
God.
Wow.
Good job.
Okay. Well, that
Ooh.
I'll have a lot to say on our what would you say, our death care system?
Our death care system. Yeah.
Pretty much what it is now.
Pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Well, ladies, thanks again for joining us, and thanks everyone in the audience out there for joining us again. If you haven't listened to any of our other episodes, please go back and take a listen. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. It does help us out. And I hope everyone has a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Later,
everyone.
Rods.